There is a question people want to ask me, and they almost never do. I see it in their faces when they find out how I live. The young woman at the bank, the man who comes to fix the well pump, the tourists who slow their cars on the road past our farm to watch me hang the wash. They are too polite to say it out loud, most of them. But I have lived 83 years, and I have learned to read a face the way you read the sky before a storm. And the question sitting behind their eyes is always the same. They want to know what happens behind the bedroom door of an Amish house. They want to know about intimacy. They think that is the secret. So I am going to tell you. I was married to the same man for 59 years, and I am going to tell you the truth about intimacy in an Amish marriage. But I will warn you before we start, the way my mother warned me before my own wedding, it is not the thing you came here to hear. It is quieter than that, and it is heavier than that, and once I have told you, I do not think you will be able to put it back down again. Most people, when they hear the word, they think of one room and one night, and the lamp turned low. I am going to take you through 59 years. And by the end, you may find that the thing you were curious about was never the secret at all. My name is Edna. I was born in the spring of 1943 in a farmhouse that is no longer standing near the little town of Mount Hope in Holmes County, Ohio. I am Old Order Amish. I have worn a cap on my head every day since I was a small girl, and I sewed the dress I am wearing right now with my own two hands on a treadle machine, the same way I have sewn every dress I have ever owned. I still live on the farm, though my husband Eli has been gone now 3 winters. I live in the Dottie house, the little house joined to the big one, where the old ones go when the young ones take over the work. My grandson and his wife are in the main house now. I hear their children running across the floor above me in the mornings, and it is a good sound, though some mornings it makes my chest ache in a way I do not have an English word for. There is an empty chair across from mine by the window. I have not moved it. People tell me I should, that it would be easier. They do not understand. After 59 years, the empty chair is not the absence of him, it is the shape he left in the room. That is the first thing I want you to hold on to, because we will come back to it. Let me start where it started, which is not in any bedroom. It started in a buggy, in the dark. When I was 16, I began to go to the Sunday singings. These are the gatherings for the young people, held in someone's barn or front room after the evening chores, where we would sing the hymns, the fast ones we were not allowed to sing in church, and we would eat and laugh, and the boys would stand on one side and the girls on the other, and pretend not to look at each other while looking at each other the entire time. That is how courtship begins for us. Not with a date, not with your photographs put up on the internet for strangers to judge. It begins quietly, and it begins under the cover of night, because a boy does not declare himself in front of the whole community. He waits. And then, when the singing is over and the lanterns are being put out, he asks if he might drive you home. The first time Eli Yoder asked to drive me home, I said no. I want you to know that, because the English think we are meek, that we simply do as we are told, that an Amish girl has no will of her own. I had plenty of will. I said no because I was frightened, and because I did not yet know what I wanted, and because there was another boy I had been hoping would ask. Eli asked me again 3 weeks later. I said no again. He did not ask a third time for nearly 2 months, and when he finally did, I had spent those 2 months thinking about why he had stopped asking, which is, of course, exactly what a patient man hopes a girl will do. So the third time, I climbed up into his buggy. It was October. The roads were dark, no streetlights out our way, just the one small lamp on the buggy and the sound of the horses' hooves on the gravel and the cold coming up off the fields. And we talked, that is all. We talked until 2 a.m, going the long way round so that the drive would last. I have forgotten almost everything I owned in my life, but I have not forgotten that ride. I remember he told me he was afraid of deep water and had never learned to swim. I remember I told him I wanted 7 children, and he went quiet, and then he said he had been thinking 8. I remember laughing so hard at something he said that the horse startled. Now, you have perhaps heard a word, if you have read about us, bundling, bed courtship, and I see the look on your face. Let me tell you what it truly was, because the rumor is uglier than the thing. In the old days, and in some of the plainer communities still, a courting couple was permitted to spend the night together, in the girl's house, in her bed, but fully clothed. Sometimes with a bolster between them. Sometimes only with the understanding that nothing was to happen and the trust that nothing would. The houses were cold and there was nowhere private and warm for 2 young people to talk, and so this was the arrangement. The purpose was not what your mind jumps to. The purpose was to talk. To lie in the dark, fully dressed, 2 feet apart, and tell each other everything, all night, the way you can only tell things to another person in the dark when you cannot see their face. Will I tell you that every young couple kept the rule perfectly? I will not lie to you. We were young and we were human, and the body is the body in any century and any bonnet. But I will tell you that the rule was not the point. The point was the talking. The point was that before Eli Yoder ever held my hand in any way that mattered, he knew that I was afraid of dying before my mother did, and I knew that he cried, just once, when his father's plow horse had to be put down, and was ashamed of it. We knew the inside of each other. By the time we married, there was almost nothing about that man's heart I did not already hold. That is a kind of intimacy, and it came years before the other kind, and if you ask me, it is the foundation the other kind stands on. Build it the other way around, body first and heart later, and I think you build a house on sand. But I am an old woman, and you did not come here for my opinions on how you live. You came for the truth about how I lived, so let me go on. We did not tell anyone we were courting. That is our way. Even our own families pretended not to know, though of course they knew. It is a strange and tender thing, the way a whole community agrees to look the other way while 2 young people find each other. There is a kindness in that privacy that I think your world has lost. When everything is shown, nothing is sacred. We kept it sacred by keeping it secret. Eli asked me to marry him on a winter night when I was 19. He did not get down on one knee. He did not have a ring, because we do not wear rings. We do not believe in adorning the body with gold to announce that we belong to someone. He simply said, in the buggy, in the dark again, that he had spoken to the bishop, and that if I was willing, we could be published in the fall. To be published means your intention is announced in church, 2 weeks before the wedding, before the whole congregation. There is no taking it back after that. So when he asked me, he was not asking for a season of engagement and a party and a registry of gifts. He was asking me to bind my entire life to his, forever, with no door left open behind me. We do not divorce. There is no escape clause in an Amish vow. When I said yes to that man in the cold dark of a January buggy, I was saying yes to every single day that came after, the good and the unbearable, the ones I could not yet imagine. I was 19 years old. I had no idea what I was promising. None of us do. That is perhaps the mercy of it. We were married in November after the harvest, on a Thursday, the way most of our weddings are. There was no white gown. I wore a new dress that I had sewn myself, in blue, and I wore that same dress to church for years afterward, because a wedding dress that you only wear once is a vanity and a waste of good cloth. There were no flowers ordered from a shop. There was celery, great bunches of it standing up in jars all down the tables, which is our tradition, though no one can quite tell you why anymore. The service lasted more than 3 hours. We sat through hymns and 2 long sermons before we ever spoke our vows, and when we did speak them, we did not face each other and gaze into each other's eyes the way your couples do. We faced the bishop. We faced God. We promised to be faithful and to care for one another in sickness and in health, in days of plenty and days of want, until death should part us. And then it was done, and we were husband and wife, and we had never once kissed in front of another living soul, and we would not for the rest of our lives. Now, the wedding night. This is the part you have been waiting for, I know. This is the door you came to peek behind. I am going to open it for you, but not the way you expect. We did not go away anywhere. There was no honeymoon, no hotel, no trip. Our wedding night was spent in my parents' house, in my own childhood bedroom, because the next morning there was a mountain of dishes to wash and tables to take down and food to put away from feeding 200 people, and we would be needed. That is the first thing the English never understand. Even our wedding night belonged partly to the work and partly to the family, and only a little, at the very end, to us alone. My mother had taken me aside the week before. It was a short conversation. We do not speak of these things in detail, not even mother to daughter. She told me that what happened between a husband and a wife was a gift from God, given to married people and to no one else, and that it was for the bringing of children into the world, and that I should not be afraid, and that I should be patient, because Eli would be as uncertain as I was. That was all. That was the whole of my education. She held my hand for a moment longer than usual, and then she let go, and we never spoke of it again, not in all the years she lived. And the truth of that night? I will tell you the truth, and the truth is that it was clumsy and frightening, and neither one of us knew the first thing, and at one point we both started laughing out of pure nerves and could not stop. And somewhere in the laughing the fear went out of the room. It was not the thing the movies make it. It was not passion like a fire. It was 2 frightened young people who had promised their whole lives to each other a few hours before, being gentle with each other in the dark and being kind. And do you know what I remember most about being married when I look back across all of it? It is not that night. I am sorry to disappoint you, but it is not. It is the next morning. It is Eli standing at my mother's sink with his sleeves rolled up, washing the wedding dishes beside me, the 2 of us not saying much, the early light coming in the window, and a feeling I had never had before in my life and have never quite had since, the feeling that I was not alone in the world anymore and never would be again. That is where the intimacy was. It was at the sink. It was in the dishwater. So you see, you came here for the bedroom, and I am already leading you out of it, because the bedroom was never where we lived. The early years were hard. I will not paint them prettier than they were. We had almost no money. We rented land from an older couple and farmed it on shares, and there were winters we ate a great deal of what we had canned, and not much else. And here is something the English do not expect, so I will say it plainly. You can be lonely inside a marriage. You can lie next to a man for years and feel that there is a fence between you that you do not know how to climb. We were strangers in many ways, despite all that talking in the buggy. Talking about your fears as a young person is one thing. Living day after day with another person's silences, their tempers, the way they chew, the way they go quiet for 3 days and will not tell you why, that is another thing entirely. There were months in those early years when I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. I could not undo it. There was no undoing it, so I had to find another way. And the way I found, the way Eli and I found together, without ever once discussing it, was the small things. He could not say tender words. He was not raised to. His own father had never once told him he was proud of him, and a man cannot give what he was never given. So Eli did not say he loved me, not on our wedding day, not on any anniversary, not on his deathbed. In 59 years, that man never once said the words, "I love you," to me. But in the second winter, when I was heavy with our first child and so sick in the mornings I could not lift my head, I woke one day to find that he had gotten up before me in the black cold and started the stove and warmed the kitchen so that I would not have to step out of bed into the freezing room. He never said a word about it. He just did it. And he did it every single morning that winter and every winter after for 57 more years. The last winter of his life, when he could barely walk, he still tried to get up first to warm the kitchen for me, and I had to pretend to be asleep so that he would feel he had done it, and then get up after him and do it myself when he had shuffled back to bed. That is how an Amish man says "I love you." He says it with a warm kitchen. He says it in a language with no words in it. And once I learned to hear that language, the fence between us came down, and I was never lonely in my marriage again. The intimacy you are curious about, the kind behind the door that comes and goes across a long marriage. It is strong when you are young, and it changes when you are old, and there are years when it is barely there at all, but the warm kitchen, that never stopped. Now you tell me which one is the deeper thing. We had 9 children. In the end, we did not use anything to prevent them. We believe children are a blessing from God and that it is not our place to decide how many blessings we will accept. So they came, about every other year, 9 of them, and I will be honest with you, there were times I was so tired I wept standing up at the stove. A large family is a joy, and it is also a labor that the English cannot imagine. With no machine to help you, every diaper washed by hand, every loaf baked, every shirt sewn, but we did not keep all 9. Our 4th baby, a girl, we named her Mary. She was born too soon, in the spring, and she lived for 2 days. I held her the whole of those 2 days. And when she died, in the gray hour before dawn, Eli was sitting beside the bed, and he did not say anything, because there was nothing in him that knew how to say anything, and I thought, in my grief and my anger, that he did not feel it, that he was made of wood. I almost hated him for it in that moment. And then I saw that his hands were shaking, and I saw that he could not look at the baby. And later, after we had buried her in the little plot behind the church where our people lie under plain stones all the same size, no matter who was rich or poor in life, I went out to the barn to find him because supper was getting cold, and I found my husband sitting on an overturned bucket in the dark with his face in his hands, and his shoulders were going up and down, and he was making no sound at all. A grown Amish man, weeping in the dark where no one could see, in absolute silence, because even his grief had been taught to be quiet. I did not say anything either. There was nothing to say. I sat down on the floor of the barn beside the bucket, in my good dress, in the dirt and the straw, and I put my hand on his knee, and we stayed like that until it was full dark and the cold drove us in. We never once spoke of that night, not in all the years that followed, but I want to tell you something, and I want you to listen, because this is the closest I can come to the thing I am trying to give you. That hour, on the floor of a cold barn, my hand on my husband's knee, neither of us saying one word, both of us broken open by the same loss, that was the most intimate hour of my entire marriage. More than any night behind any door, do you understand me? More than all of that put together, because intimacy, the real kind, the kind that is worth 59 years, is not 2 bodies. It is 2 people who have been hollowed out by the same grief and choose to sit in the dark together rather than apart. It is being fully known, the worst of you and the most ruined of you, and not being left. That is the secret you came here for. I told you it would be heavier than you thought. The years went on, the way years do. The children grew. We bought our own farm at last, 80 acres, and we worked it together. And I do not mean that he worked it, and I kept the house, though that is how the work was divided. I mean that we made the farm together. He would not sell a field or buy a horse or take on a new crop without sitting at the table with me first and talking it through late after the children slept. In public, yes, he had the final word, as is our way. The man is the head of the home. But behind the door of our own kitchen, I will tell you, that man did almost nothing without asking me what I thought, and most of the time my thinking became his deciding. That is also our way, the part the outsiders never see. The English look at us and they see a woman walking 2 steps behind, and they feel sorry for her. They do not know that the whole farm turned on what that woman said across the supper table at 10 o'clock at night. We were not solemn people either. I want you to know that. I have read what the English write about us, that we are grim, that we never laugh. Foolishness. Eli had a dry way of saying things that could make me laugh until I had to leave the room. We had our jokes that no one else would have understood, built up over decades, a whole private language of one word or one look. At a long funeral or a longer sermon, he would catch my eye across the meeting house and do a small thing with his eyebrow, just for me, and I would have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from disgracing us both. 59 years of inside jokes. That is intimacy too, the laughing kind, and you do not get it in a year or in 10. It has to be grown, like anything else worth having, slow and in all weathers. There were hard times between us too. I will not pretend we were always tender. We are people, not saints in a painting. There was a stretch in our 40s when we were angry at each other for the better part of a year, over a thing so small I cannot even rightly remember it now, some matter about his brother and some money. We slept in the same bed every night of that year, our backs to each other, 2 stones, but we did not leave. We could not leave, and I have come to believe that not being able to leave is not the curse the English think it is. Because we could not leave, we had to find the way back, and we did find it. You always find it, if the only door out is locked. Your world keeps every door wide open, and so when the cold year comes, as it comes to every marriage, you walk out one of those open doors and you call it freedom. We did not have that freedom, and I have lived long enough now to think it was not freedom at all that you have. I think it is only another kind of loneliness, dressed up in nicer clothes. But again, I am an old woman, and you may live as you see fit. I want to tell you about the end now, about Eli's last year, because if there is one thing I have learned about intimacy in all my 83 years, it is that you do not truly know what it was until you reach the end of it. He took sick in his 83rd year, the same age I am now. It was his heart, and then it was more than his heart. We are not a people who chase after every treatment. We do not believe in clinging to this life with both hands when God is calling us home. And Eli did not want the hospitals and the machines and the tubes. He wanted to die in his own bed, in his own house, which is what nearly all of our people want and what nearly all of us are given. So I brought him home, and I cared for him. And here, at the very end, is where I will tell you the last truth, the deepest one, the one that you absolutely did not come here for. I bathed that man. In his last months, when he could not do it himself, I washed my husband's body the way you would wash a child's, gently, with a cloth and a basin of warm water, every day. The body that had frightened me on our wedding night 60 years before. The body that had given me 9 children. The body that had warmed 10,000 kitchens. It was old now, and failing, and there was nothing left in it of passion or romance or any of the things you imagine when you hear the word intimacy. And I am telling you that washing that dying man's frail back, holding him up with one arm while I cleaned him, the 2 of us not speaking, both of us knowing what was coming, and neither of us able to say it, that was intimacy more naked than any wedding night. To be that helpless in front of another person, to let yourself be that helpless. To do that service for someone, day after day, with no shred of romance in it, only love worn down to the bare wood. There is nothing your world calls intimacy that comes within a mile of it. He died on a morning in February, just before dawn, in the cold hour, the same hour our Mary had died 60 years before. I was holding his hand. He had not spoken in 2 days. But just before the end, his fingers tightened on mine. Just barely, the smallest pressure, and I knew it was him saying the thing he could never say with his mouth in 59 years. I love you. I love you. Thank you. Goodbye. All of it, in one weak squeeze of an old man's hand. And then he was gone, and the hand went soft, and the kitchen was cold, because for the first time in 59 years, there had been no one to get up and warm it. The whole community came. That is our way. The men dug his grave by hand, taking turns, neighbors and sons and grandsons. The women filled my kitchen with food so that I would not have to think about cooking for 2 weeks. We buried him in his plain clothes, in a plain wooden box made by his own grandson, in the plot behind the church, under a stone the same size as every other stone, beside the tiny stone that says only, Mary. And I went home to the Dowdy house alone, an old woman, after 59 years. So now you know. You came here to find out what intimacy means in an Amish marriage, and I expect you thought I would blush and lower my eyes and tell you some small, scandalous thing about the bedroom, something you could repeat to your friends. And instead, an old woman has kept you here far longer than you meant to stay, and has told you about a barn floor, and a basin of warm water, and a cold kitchen, and the squeeze of a dying hand. This is what I want you to carry away from an old woman who has nearly finished her own life. The thing you are all chasing, the passion, the fire, the night behind the door, that is the smallest part of it. It is real, and it is good, and it is a gift, but it is the doorway, not the house. The house is everything that comes after. The house is the warm kitchen on a winter morning. It is the silence on the floor of the barn. It is the 1,000 suppers and the inside jokes and the year of turned backs that you survive together. It is washing a body that is leaving you. It is being known all the way down to the worst of you and not being left. That is the secret. That is what was behind the door the whole time. It was never the thing you thought. I am 83 years old. There is an empty chair across from me by the window, and I have not moved it, and now perhaps you understand why. It is not the absence of him. It is the shape he left in the room. I sit with that shape every evening as the light goes, and I am not afraid, and I am not even as lonely as you might think, because a marriage like that does not truly end. It just goes quiet, the way Eli always was, the way the deepest things always are. Thank you for sitting with me. I do not have many people to tell these things to anymore, and you have given an old woman the gift of your time, and I do not take it lightly. If something I have said has touched a place in you, I would be glad to know it. Tell me, wherever you are watching from, was there ever a person who knew the worst of you and stayed? Because if there was, then you already understand everything I have tried to say, and you do not need an old Amish woman to explain it to you at all. May God keep you. This is Edna, and I will see you again.